I am currently a professor of medicine and the director of the Inflammatory Bowel Diseases Center at the University of Chicago, in Chicago, Illinois. The University of Chicago has had a long tradition in gastroenterology, the first gastroenterology department in the country, and we also have a long tradition in treating inflammatory bowel disease. I'm originally from New York. I did my medical school at Mount Sinai, which is where Dr. Cohen had been many years ago, and then I was at Harvard Medical School, Beth Israel Hospital for my residency. And then subsequently, I went to the University of Chicago for my fellowship, did advanced training in inflammatory bowel disease and in health economic outcomes, and then I went on faculty. So our most senior mentor, Dr. Joseph Kersner, came to the University of Chicago in 1935, and it was only a few years after the sentinel paper by Cohen, Ginsberg, and Oppenheimer came out in the Journal of American Medical Association that discussed regional enteritis. Back then, what subsequently was referred to as Crohn's disease was not very common, but as Dr. Kersner's career continued into the 1950s and 1960s and 70s, there became a focus on inflammatory bowel disease. One of his trainees, Dr. Stephen Hanauer, joined him in the early 1980s and really built what is now our modern Inflammatory Bowel Disease Center at the University of Chicago. Dr. Hanauer trained many fine investigators. I like to include myself in that list, as well as Dr. David Rubin, who's one of my close partners. And we've really continued to expand not just in the clinical care of inflammatory bowel disease, but we have a designated basic science group led by Eugene Chang, who's a world-renowned researcher in gastroenterology and inflammatory bowel disease, as well as a translational core to kind of match the clinical with the basic science group too. Yes, I have a few different presentations at this meeting. Many of our faculty do, and there's also other programs for fellows and nurse practitioners. This really has become the premier program, certainly in inflammatory bowel disease, and certainly one of the top programs in gastroenterology in the world, for sure. There's been a lot of interest in many different areas of inflammatory bowel disease that this meeting is going to focus on. One in particular is called the microbiome. So that's why do people get inflammatory bowel disease? In fact, why do people get many different diseases? And it's been well described that as countries become more quote-unquote westernized, they get more Western diseases, inflammatory bowel disease being one of those groups of diseases. And there's a lot of interest in the gut flora, the microbiome, which we thought in the past was perhaps reactive to whatever was going on in the body. But we're learning more and more it may actually be the driving force for diseases, not just in the gut, diseases throughout the whole body. Dr. Chang's research group recently had a big publication in major journals about the role of the microbiome running the circadian rhythms in people from one of the research groups too. The other areas that is being very interested to clinical people are new medications that are coming out or being developed in inflammatory bowel disease. We've had a major breakthrough starting in 1998 with the first of the anti-TNF biological group drugs, in fact, the first biologics. But since that time, until recently, there has really only been advances in that family of medicines. Last year we had the first anti-integrin antibody for ulcerative colitis, the second one for Crohn's disease come on the market. And now, just prior to this meeting, one of the companies applied for approval for an anti-IL-12/23 drug. There are not just biologic agents being developed, but even what are called small molecules, which are pill formulations of some modern medicines. So this is very exciting.